So we've got our composited photograph to this point. We've got the sky in the background. Remember, we can switch off the visibility of the overlying layer with the mountains. There's the sky in the background, and when we put the two together, it's not looking quite right, is it? There are some issues around the edges of the selection of the mountains where there's a bit of a white bit left over that shouldn't have been there. So how do we fix that? Well, when we've got a mask, you can see now that my foreground color right now is this pink color, and that's just because that was the last color that was selected whenever someone was using the program before. If I click on the mask icon, so I'm over on my layers panel, and I'll click on the thumbnail of the mask, so that activates the mask, and you can see now the foreground color has changed to black. And one of the things that make up the mask is the mask is simply a black and white image with grayscale, so it's got tones in between. So now if I want to increase this mask, and I'll do this fairly dramatically, I'll use my paintbrush here, and my paintbrush now has the black color selected. So if I start painting here, it will actually paint that mask to create more of a mask. So I'm just painting randomly to show that I can increase the amount of the image that is being removed by painting black. I'll just undo that, Control Z. The alternative would be if I go down to my foreground color here and click on the little double-headed arrow where I switch the colors and start painting with this color, it'll paint that white sky back in again, and it'll even have that little blue bit up the top there that we saw before. So again, I'll undo that, Control Z, and switch those colors back again. Shift X will do that same thing there, by the way. Now what I want to do, I want to get a brush that this brush is probably going to be fairly satisfactory to begin with, and I want to zoom in on these mountains here, and I want to work on fixing up the edge here. And so if I get a brush, that's going to be a bit too big, so I'll right click with my mouse with the Control and Alt keys held down, and I can adjust the size of that brush, and now maybe a little bit smaller than that again, and I'll leave it with the soft edge. And now as I paint black, I can actually fix up the problem with that leftover little bit of white there on the mountain. So I can go around the whole image and fix up the edge there just simply by painting black, which is adding to the mask. Now remember, if I hold down my Shift key and click on the mask, it switches the mask off, and switching that mask back on, just holding down the Shift key and clicking again. So I'd go around the whole thing and carefully adjusting that white area. I'll just go Control 0, and you can see how easy it is to do that. Let's just have a look at what that mask actually is. If I switch to my channels panel here and switch on the layer mask and switch off the RGB, you can see that that layer mask is simply a black and white image, and where I've just painted that little bit in along the side of the mountain, you'll see a much softer edge, I would suggest. So the edge here has a fairly soft transition. So I'll just go Control 0 again to fill that, switch my RGB back on, visibility back on, switch my layer mask off, and go back to my layers. One more thing I'll do just now, so you can see how you could clean up the selection there. One more thing I'll do though is I'll just click on my layer here, and now I'm going to add an adjustment to change the contrast a little bit on this. So I'll go to my adjustments panel here, and I'll create a new levels adjustment, and I'll click on here to do that, and there's our familiar levels histogram there. And I want to have this so it only applies to the layer underneath. So I just click on this little icon here, and it tells me that that's going to clip it just to the layer underneath. And now if I go up to my defaults here and add some contrast to this, so I'll try the first contrast increase, and maybe even try the second contrast increase. And you can see how that is looking more natural now with that rich blue sky, the image would normally be an awful lot more contrasty than with an overcast, so it's starting to look more realistic. So if I carried on fixing up the edges of the mask and adjusting that the relative contrast and curves for each of those discrete layers, then I could end up with an image that was going to make a perfectly satisfactory composite. That'll be the end of that video.